are in the beautiful state of Florida. Florida is known for its diverse plants, wildlife, beautiful springs, rivers, lakes, beaches, and more. Most recreational activities are centered around our waters also, like fishing, boating, hunting, and kayaking. Florida is also part of the global fish trade. Its aquaculture, or farming of aquatic organisms, brings in over $172 million in sales of tropical fish alone. Florida's subtropical climate, water connections from inland to the coasts, numerous international ports for travel and shipping, and high human population make it an ideal place for non-native species to enter and establish. A non-native species is a species that's introduced to a new area. Many non-native species introductions are assisted with the help of humans. Through purposeful, unintentional, or even natural ways, non-native species like plants, animals, and diseases find their way from all over the world into Florida's waters. When a non-native species starts to cause harm or shows the potential to cause harm to the environment, economy, or human health, then we call it an invasive species. And due to the harm that invasive species cause, many agencies around the state work together with stakeholders to study, contain, remove, or report invasive species. Different habitats and invasive species have varying degrees of challenges when trying to manage the invasive species due to the water connections and the activities that happen on those waters. So let's take a road trip around Florida and see what some agencies are doing to control aquatic invasive species.
Good day, my name's Jeff Sowers and I'm with the Rainbow Springs and Aqua River Aquatic Preserve. We're out here today at the confluence of the Silver and the Aqua River, two areas that I manage. And this is a self-end catfish. Common name for it are Plecostomus or common pleco. This is the invasive species that we have here in the Silver and the Aqua River that we've been managing and trying to do removal programs. And what's really cool about these fish is that they're very hard armored. They have spines on every scale, so they're very hard to handle, and there is no natural predator in these systems for this fish. And it's a detritus or an algae eater. And if you can look at the mouth, you can see that they have a suction type mouth, so they can actually hold on to plants, hold on to the bottom, and even in high current velocity, they're able to stabilize themselves by using that sucker mouth. And they have, as you can see, that they're very dark colored, so they can camouflage themselves very well. And of course, the reason they call them the self-end catfish, you can see the self-end on their back. And these guys are actually native to the Amazon drainage in South America, but they've been introduced into multiple places in the United States, mostly through aquarium release and some of the pet trade, and also submersion of ponds and things like that in aquaculture farms. These guys first appeared in the state of Florida in the 1950s, and that was around the Tampa Bay area. This is the fourth year that we've been intensively trying to manage the population of the self-end catfish in the Silver River. We've removed to date almost 1,600 fish. One of the other systems that I manage is Rainbow River, and that's also an aquatic preserve. And we also had a program of removal of the plecos there. It actually began many years ago. It was about 2003 that they were first observed in the Rainbow River, and we started a program to remove them. And over about a 4-year period, we removed about 75, which is not a real high number because we never had a really big infestation in that system, so it made it easier for us to control them, and we felt we really moved to eradication at that time. Then for a 10-year period, we saw no plecos whatsoever. And then the last few years, we've seen a few move up into the bottom part of the river in the fall, and we've been able to do a management program there to remove those because they're very specific of where they're at. We can cite them because of the clarity of the water. It makes this system unique because we're able to actually spot the fish, be able to observe the fish from the boat. And we use a spear. We'll get in the water with snorkel gear, and we use a spear to take the fish out, return it to the boat, put it on ice, and as we move up the river, we'll take everyone that we see. And we presently go out at least once a week, and we do it every week except for the month of January, when the temperatures are really too cold to be able to get in and out of the water all the time. We collect length, we collect weight. We also sex the fish to see if it's male or female. We also remove the gonads, remove the ovaries, and we're looking to see the information of the number of eggs that the fish have, what their development is, to whether they're immature or mature or ready to spawn. And we can tell that, and we'll be able to figure out when their prime spawning time is, when we can makes them easier to locate. And just from the data last year, we've been able to see that their prime spawning time begins in late April and moves all the way into the end of September. But then their very biggest peak is in July. So that's the time when we, because of their burrowing activity, the males will dig a burrow for the females to lay eggs in. That makes them easier to find because there's only specific areas that they tend to burrow in. And we can take those guys out at that time. And so that gives us a good overall idea of what the fish are doing. The impacts that the plecos have on the river, mostly in this system, we see it's a problem of erosion, because the males, during their mating season, they burrow into the banks, and in high numbers they can cause an incredible amount of erosion. Two other invasive species that we have in the Silver River and the Aquatic River Aquatic Preserve are the blue tilapia and the brown hoplo. Right now we're looking at their life histories. We're getting all the information we can on the fish and trying to consider ways to control them. Right now the population is very high, especially of the tilapia in the Silver River. And so at this time we don't have a good control method that we can practice, but we're going to continue into the future, try to find another way to control it. My take-home message for the public is prevention is so much easier way to control an invasive species. If they're not introduced, then you don't have to try to figure a way to control them. Don't dump your aquarium into any creek, stream, or lake, whatever. Anytime that you have a fish or you have a turtle or anything else that is not native to the area, if you need to get rid of it, take it back to the pet store. Call FWC. Sometimes you can take them back to them, but do not release them into the wild.
Hello, I'm Dr. Jeff Hill with the University of Florida's Tropical Aquaculture Laboratory down in Ruskin near the city of Tampa. So our laboratory works with a lot of different stakeholders in aquaculture, the pet trade, state agencies, other groups, environmental groups and such. But what mostly we do in our laboratory is work with non-native species, including invasive species in the environment. Invasive species are those that are non-native, they get established, and they have consequences that are negative for people, for the environment, for economy, for maybe human health or animal health. One of our main management programs in our lab here is to determine that risk of invasiveness. That's using risk analysis, which means that we determine what the risk is, the probability that an organism might be able to escape and establish in an area, and also the consequences or impacts if those non-native species do happen to establish and spread. And then we also are very interested in how to manage those risks. So we work with a lot of stakeholders, agencies, industry, and the public in order to try to reduce and mitigate those risks.
I'm Ed Harris, and I'm a biologist with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission. I work in the invasive plant management section, and today we are standing on the shoreline of Lake Tohopekaliga which we all shorten to Lake Toho. Lake Toho is about an 18,000 acre lake in Osceola County and has a tremendous hydrilla population out here. It's been growing on this lake since the mid-1980s, and recent lack of funding have allowed this plant to expand and cover almost 14,000 acres of the lake out here. We have tried to manage public access points, tried to keep hydrilla out of areas that are important for snail kite nesting and largemouth bass spawning. And it's a real challenge to try to meet the goals and desires of every user group out here. Bass anglers, flood control specialists, pleasure boaters, water skiers. And this lake is the start of the federal navigation channel that runs all the way through the Kissimmee chain of lakes, the Kissimmee River, and into Lake Okeechobee, and then out to the Gulf and the Atlantic Ocean. Large areas of the lake are blocked from public access. People are using different boat ramps and trying to figure out a way to get through the hydrilla, just because we have not been able to manage it. So management of hydrilla is an incredibly complex topic. We have a variety of tools that we can use and a variety of opinions as to how it can be done. So the agency created a hydrilla position statement a number of years ago that in short term says hydrilla has the potential to be good and it has the potential to be a problem, and that our agency is going to manage hydrilla on a lake by lake basis based on input from the agency scientists and the public at large. Our stakeholders have a lot of input into how we do all of our resource management throughout the state. So we look at hydrilla as providing a benefit to anglers and waterfowlers at relatively low levels, but once it expands too much, then it really starts to block access and cause potential flood control issues. So we have a fairly large interagency group that meets on a regular basis. It is the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, the counties, the cities, South Florida Water Management District, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and we try to craft a plan for hydrilla management that will try to make as much progress in a positive direction for each of the stakeholder groups that have given us input. And we don't always hit all the buttons, but over the years, the general public has been satisfied with the diversity of management that we've been able to do out here. So we try to manage hydrilla in different areas of the lake and at different times of the year. And we use a variety of methods, but the most common method that we use is one of several aquatic herbicides. And we have tried harvesting hydrilla on this lake, but found that the impact was extremely short-lived and the process was very, very expensive and ended up spreading fragments of hydrilla all around the lake. So we can use harvesters for other projects, but for hydrilla, we really are limited to some of the aquatic herbicides. And they are either applied by an airboat injecting them underneath the surface of the water or by helicopters that spray them across the surface of the water. Other invasive species that are managed not just on Lake Toho but throughout the state are water hyacinths and Cuban bulrush. We try to maintain those plants at the lowest feasible level with a process that we refer to as maintenance control, which means that we are out all the time keeping these plants controlled as much as possible so that they don't get to form large plant populations that are really problematic. So the public can help prevent the spread of hydrilla by making sure that they clean their trailers and their boats after they come out of a lake that has hydrilla in it, to get all the fragments off so that they don't transport it to another water body. Because a fragment of hydrilla can survive on a trailer for weeks at a time. It may look dried up, but it can survive when it gets moved into a new water body.
Hi, my name is Mike Kirkland. I'm the Senior Invasive Animal Biologist for the South Florida Water Management District. I manage invasive animals covering an area of responsibility over 16 counties. So we're here in the Everglades. This is specifically the Everglades and Francis S. Taylor Wildlife Management Area. It's north of Everglades National Park. and we're out here surveying for Burmese pythons. Burmese pythons are an apex predator, and they've become one of the flagship species for invasive species management around the world. The first Burmese python that was discovered was in Everglades National Park in 1979. We didn't notice a population explosion until the mid-90s and up to present day. We believe that pythons were introduced to the wilds of South Florida through a combination of intentional and accidental releases as a result of the exotic pet trade business. Burmese pythons are now illegal to own since 2011, but that legislation clearly came too late, and we're seeing a large reproducing established population across South Florida's natural areas that is greatly impacting native wildlife. So we're seeing up to 90 to 95% reduction of fur-bearing animals in Everglades National Park and the surrounding natural areas. Not only does it directly predate on native wildlife, but it's eating that same prey that native wildlife like alligators, native snakes, Florida panther. It's displacing our native wildlife by taking away that food source from them. So we have a variety of different management strategies for the Burmese python. One are the contractor programs. I'm the manager of the district's python elimination program, where we have 50 paid contractors that are out surveying over 11 different counties in our natural areas looking for pythons. We pay them per hour for their search efforts, and then we also pay them additional incentive or bounty that's based on length for every python they remove. Right now, the contractor programs are the most effective and efficient management strategy in the history of the issue to date, but they're not the only strategy we have. I also manage a telemetry project where we are tracking pythons here in this area specifically. We're trying to learn more about their behavior and their non-native range and understand their life history. And we're hoping that this project turns into a full-blown, what we call a scout snake program, where tracked, telemetred animals will lead us to other animals. Other management strategies that we're focused on revolve around detection. Burmese pythons are well camouflaged animals. We don't know how many are out there because we can't do a conventional population study on them like we could, say, for something like deer. Due to their cryptic nature, along with the vast and relative inaccessibility of the Everglades, we don't know how many are out there. They're very hard to see, and so trying to increase detection rates is one of our primary objectives with research. We are looking at things like near-infrared cameras coupled with artificial intelligence to try to find pythons, detect them against background. The Water Management District has another program through the University of Florida where we have this targeted outreach, and we try to find audiences, clubs, or different interest groups that have an opportunity to see a python in the wild. These groups that are out in the outdoors in South Florida already, and we're trying to educate them not only about the importance of not releasing animals into the wild, but also how to identify an exotic constrictor like a Burmese python versus one of our many native snake species. Another really important outreach thing that my agency co-hosts with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, FWC, is the annual Python Challenge, which is a 10-day event that invites people from all over the world to come try their hand at humanely removing pythons from the wild. It does result in usually hundreds of pythons that get removed. Really, it's more of an outreach event where it raises awareness to the issue. And it's through that awareness that we try to help prevent the next python invasion, so people know not to release their pets into the wild, but also it helps garner support for these other programs. The South Florida Water Management District hails itself as a protector of the Everglades. It takes the lead on most Everglades restoration projects. We're trying to restore the hydrology, try to get water to flow back to its natural state as best as we can, and we're trying to restore habitat for native wildlife. Well, so far, our agency alone has spent almost $7 billion on Everglades restoration. Those efforts would largely be wasted if we didn't control for invasive species as well. If we restore habitat so that native wildlife can live here, but let an apex predator like the Burmese python or something else just come and take over, then all those efforts are for naught. So invasive species management is a critical component of environmental restoration.
Well, we heard it from the experts. Humans are one of the major reasons that invasive species are introduced and spread. So we need to do our part to prevent those introductions. We heard some very easy but important tips like washing all of our equipment thoroughly, not releasing pets or aquarium contents into the wild, and using the state's amnesty program to return those exotic pets that we just can't care for anymore. So let's all work together to keep Florida beautiful, its habitats diverse, so that future generations can also enjoy them too.